Welcome back, I'm David Gibbons. We cross now to Canberra to talk with Jim Wallace about what's happening in politics. Thanks for joining us, Jim.
My pleasure, David.
Jim, Queenslanders are about to head to the polls to decide who will form the next state government. Is there anything Christian voters should be keeping in mind?
We reckon there's a lot of things, David, and we've asked the parties 12 questions. We've put the responses to those on a website called QLDvotes.org. And I would encourage your Queensland viewers to go to that, to have a look at it. Just be aware that we don't have responses from the Greens and One Nation, and also look at the answers very critically.
Now, recent news reports have indicated that Queensland Greens have struck a preference deal that will give Labor a boost in 14 key seats. Does that mean anything for Christian voters, Jim?
Yes, it certainly does, David, because we don't know where the Greens stand. We don't have the questionnaire responses from them. And also we've seen, of course, that the Greens have supported some legislation across other states that we wouldn't agree with. So if they're now making deals with Labor, it makes us really concerned about where, in particular, Labor might go on surrogacy after the election. They've not made their position clear on this, and so it is something that Queensland voters need to really consider.
You haven't mentioned abortion here. Is that not an issue in this campaign?
Well, David, both parties have said they won't change the rules on abortion, and that's good, both major parties. But the reality is that anybody at any time could introduce a private member's bill, and so we could still see this go the way of Victoria. So it is still a problem, but the major parties at the moment have said they have no intention of changing the rules.
Jim, on the issue of abortion, the federal government recently decided to overturn the ban on aid money being used to fund abortions. Have you been disappointed over the Rudd government's decision?
Yes, of course we have, David. We very much trusted in Mr Rudd's moral compass, being Christianity, and he does, of course, say that he's still opposed to abortion, which I'm sure he is. But we would have expected him to stamp his personality and his values on the caucus and to lead the whole party that way. Unfortunately now, of course, that's not the case, and so we will have Australian aid money used for abortion.
And finally, Jim, the International Monetary Fund gave some stark warnings recently about the effect of the global financial crisis on the world's poor. What are the chief concerns here?
Well, I think the concern is, David, that in areas of poverty, and particularly where there's been an expectation that things are on the up, when you suddenly throw them back into poverty, as 100 million people will be, there's also likely, very likely, to be an increase of violence in those areas. And obviously this will only add terribly to the lives of these already very unfortunate people. So we really have to pressure the Australian government and all Western nations to keep up their aid, their levels of aid to these areas.
Thanks for your time today, Jim.
Thank you, David.